Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day and welcome to another episode of Motorsport History. As you've seen in the title, this time I'm making a video about Dakar, another crazy addition in motorsport. Since Dakar comes in different shapes and sizes, I'm dividing the series into 3 episodes, the first being about cars, second about motorcycles, and last but not least, trucks. I do have to mention ATVs and UTVs, but those came later. As always, we're talking about the 80s and 90s. Before we get into it, if you like my content, be sure to like and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate the support. Let me tell you about Dakar. It's something quite special. The races are hosted on terrain much tougher than conventional rally. In fact, it's in the middle of the desert, that is, the Sahara Desert. Unlike in previous episodes, this category of racing wasn't brought up by the FIA. In fact, it was started by private teams after the location was decided when Thierry Sabine got lost in the Tenerife Desert whilst competing in the 1975 Abidjan-Nice Rally. The 1974 London Sahara Munich World Cup Rally was the first race to be driven across the Sahara Desert, but that was nothing like the Dakar that I'm telling you about. 1979 was the first ever recorded Dakar race, and it was mostly done by private teams. But take a look at this. In first place we had a Range Rover V8. Quite a test for the car's endurance to be driving a 10,000 kilometer race. Yes, that is 10,000 kilometers of desert. In the earlier races, usually about less than half the cars that entered the race actually got to the finish. That just proves how tough the conditions were. Most cars got stuck or broke down, but there were bigger accidents as well, since vehicles were doing high speeds over rough terrain, sometimes even in the dark, and there were in fact multiple competitors en route to the same location at the same time, which meant there were even many cases of them crashing into each other when they couldn't see well. Imagine the heavy winds that sometimes threw sand all over the place, making it impossible for the drivers to navigate the terrain. Rising in popularity, by 1980 there were 216 vehicles at the start, almost 300 in 1981, and nearly 400 by 1982. You get what I'm saying? People saw the challenge and they wanted to try it. Cars you could never imagine started racing in the sport. We could say that some people took it as a joke, racing with Vespas. They pretty much got to the finish, but the race was over by then. Others were serious and up to the task. This time, I'm telling you about the cars based on their podium positions over the years. Starting off with a few interesting Jeeps on the list, we have the before mentioned Range Rover V8. And well, this thing is pretty self-explanatory. The first ones, before 1981 that is, were actually two-door terrain vehicles that did surprisingly well due to their long suspension travel and large and quite powerful engines. The best version of this car was the 4.2-liter V8 that was naturally aspirated, of course, making 200 horsepower. The only thing upgraded on this car before the events was actually the front suspension, but no engine modifications. It was on the podium in the seasons of 1979, 1981, 1983, 1984, 1987, and 1988. It was much more robust than the other competitor of the time, the Fiat Campagnola, which was much slower, having only a 2-liter naturally aspirated, carbureted 4-cylinder engine that could not keep up, having only 80 horsepower. Sadly, the Campagnola didn't see too many podium spots since it was often beaten by the Volkswagen Iltis, which was an interesting competitor if you ask me. It was the successor of the Volkswagen 181. Both the Campagnola and the Iltis were military terrain vehicles that weren't too astonishing performance-wise, but one thing that did have over the Range Rover was the weight. They were much lighter. The Iltis had only a carbureted, naturally aspirated 1.7-liter 4-cylinder specially built for the car to raise it from 75 horsepower to 100. It was quite good in the earlier years, claiming the first 2 podium spots in the 1980s championship. Both of these were quickly overshadowed by none other than the mighty Lada Niva, a car that started production in 1977 and is still built the same way today. If it does great, why change it? Well, the Niva sadly never made it to first place, but it was on the podium in 1981, 1982, and 1983. It raced with a carbureted, naturally aspirated 1.6-liter 4-cylinder, making 75 horsepower. But what got this thing to the podiums was its outstanding ability to go anywhere, anyhow, using a brilliant 4-wheel drive system. Stay with me now, because we have something quite interesting on our plate here. In 1984, we saw the first Porsche hit the podium. In first place was the 911. It came with a naturally aspirated 3-liter flat 6, pushing out roughly around 250 horsepower, so the most of the group so far. But it had a huge disadvantage. The car was rear-wheel drive, and it could simply not keep up with the all-wheel drive competitors on the rough terrain. But Porsche had a solution. They made something bigger and stronger, this time with all-wheel drive. They made the 959. This was a beast, and it's one of the favorites of the Dakar Rally. The 959 came with a twin-turbo 2.8 liter, making 400 horsepower, close to twice compared to the 911. The 959 claimed the first 2 podium spots in 1986. I believe it would have gotten more, but one fascinating competitor showed up and stole the glory. I have to mention that the 911 and the 959 were both meant for Group B rally, but they did not get homologated in time to race there. Instead, they came to Dakar. But there's another car, one that has raced in Group B. I'll put a link to that on the top right if you want to see one of my previous videos discussing the whole history of Group B. That also tells you why these cars are so special. The car that I'm talking about is the Peugeot 205 T16. It already made its mark in Group B, but it wasn't done yet. It came to Dakar, and it managed to win in 1987 and 1988, only to be replaced by the 405. The 405 was originally meant for hill climb championships, but it seems that Peugeot decided to include them in Dakar as well, and let me tell you, they were right for doing so. The 405 claimed the first 2 podium spots in 1989, the first 3 in 1990, and another podium in 1991. The car came packed with a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, making a minimum of 220 horsepower, but sometimes pushing up to 600, to all wheels of course. It weighed around 1,300 kilograms, and that made for a good power-to-weight ratio. Pretty stunning if you ask me. Up next, we have the greatest of them all, the Mitsubishi Pajero, the car that no one managed to truly beat in these years. It had podium spots from 1983 to 1989, 1991 to 1993, and 1995 to 2007, and in most of these it was in first place. That's insane. I guess it's the true champ of this wild game. It came with a naturally aspirated 3.5 liter 24-valve dual overhead cam V6 that was making 275 horsepower at 6.5 thousand RPM. Take a look at this thing. I do have to mention that Rolls-Royce gave it a shot as well, with their Corniche, but it never made it to the podium. And with that, I'm ending this episode. Be sure to come back next time so we take a look at the motorcycles of Dakar. Should be hell of a ride. Stay safe out there, and I'll be back with weekly uploads.